and I'd like to welcome everybody to our Red Hill Cattle Talk this evening. Um, really excited to have a good speaker to lead off, and we're going to start with honored to have Lee Leachman on tonight. Lee has been um, so much involved in the cattle business his whole life, and we're proud to be partners in the Dollar Profit Share program with him, and we always have respected what Lee does and his breeding program, and excited to get to work with him and use his program. Um, with Lee's based out of Colorado, travels a lot. He's actually in a hotel in Wisconsin today, but we certainly appreciate our friendship with Lee and his leadership within the beef industry, and I think he'll excited to hear what he has to say tonight. So with that, Lee, we'll just turn it over to you.
Bart and Gordon, it's certainly a pleasure to be here, and look forward to being out at one of these spring sales. Our sales are so close together, it makes it hard, but we'll look forward to getting out to be there. We've certainly enjoyed working with you guys, and as maybe people know or don't know, we've used a fair bit of your genetics in our program, and so and they've gone quite well. So we're strong believers in the Red Hill program, and we put our money where our mouth is. I want to encourage everybody. This talk is best given interactively, and on a call like this, the best way to interact, I think you have a chat function. If you hover your mouse down toward the bottom of the screen or the top of the screen, you'll see a little bar pop up, and in there's a chat button. And if you click on that chat, then you can type in a question, and that question will go to Bart, and then Bart, you can sure interrupt me as we go, because like I said, I've heard all this before, and so it's more interesting with the questions than without. But what we're going to talk about is this question of maximizing genetic improvement for profitability. It's something that we're very focused on. It's something that Red Hill's very focused on, and I think it's an interesting subject in that those of us in the business have selected cattle for all of our lives for different things. Everybody's selecting for something. You're selecting whether it's a certain visual type or cattle that perform in a certain environment or certain traits we're trying to improve. I think everybody on the call has a something they select for. And what we started doing back when I went into business with Dallas Horton in 2003, Dallas said to me one day, he said, I want to buy some bulls in our sale and take them up, breed my commercial cows in Wyoming. He said, which one should I buy? I said, well, Dallas, what do you want to do? And he looked at me, he said, well, you know what I want to do. I want to make more money. And I looked at him and I said, Dallas, I said, I don't know which ones make the most money. I can tell you which ones have bigger cow size or smaller cow size or grow faster or more cavities or more marbling or more ribeye, but I don't know which ones make the most money. And he said, Lee, I don't think we can be in the seed stock business unless we can predict that. So we hooked up with a group out of Canada. They were called Beef Improvement Group at the time. A fellow there by the name of Brian Pogue and Steve Miller were running some really good models simulating profitability. And most of what we're going to talk about today is based on their work. And it's something they've been doing clear back into the early 1990s. And it's proven very effective, and it's what we call dollar profit. And so we're going to talk about what that system is and what it's about, and particularly how that applies to your commercial herd. Because I think the focus of the presentation tonight is not so much how Bart and I are selecting our herds for profitability, but what does that mean for you as a commercial producers? How do you use the tools we're using to make better bull selection or female selection for your herd? And how does that improve over time? And where do you put your focus? And so hopefully tonight we'll give you a chance to kind of really zoom in on that and have a takeaway that's pretty easy to understand. So the first question I ask everybody, what drives your bottom line? And that's complicated in beef cattle. I mean, we probably have people on the call who sell at weaning. We have people probably the background. We have people that may own them all the way through harvest and sell them on a grid. We had all these different functions. We have different environments, but and when we ask this question, a whole bunch of traits pop up, right? Some people say, well, it's growth or calving ease or carcass or marbling or cow size or frame score or muscle reproduction. Of course, acclimation's one that comes up a lot. I don't have structural soundness on there, but of course that's important too. But how do these traits affect your bottom line? I mean, at the end of the year, when you pay all your bills, how much money's left over? And how do these traits drive that? And I think that's a challenge to most of us. It's hard for us to make sense out of that. And I think the first thing I want to focus on is for those of you on the call who are running a cow calf operation that sells calves at weaning. So I give this talk a lot, and usually no matter where I give it in the world, we can agree on certain things that drive profit for a rancher who sells calves at weaning. And the first one is output. How much you have for sale? What does a cow's calf weigh? And then what is that calf worth? Does that calf bring market, under market, or over market? Output. Output matters. And I think in the beef industry, probably maybe to our detriment, we selected for output more than anything. The cattle we have today grow way faster than the cattle we had 10 and 20 years ago. I mean, it's not even close. If we had them in the same pen, we'd be shocked by how much difference there is in how fast they grow per day. But that's not the entire function for a cow-calf operator. In fact, maybe more important than output is reproduction, because the output that we select for in terms of growth, is how heavy the individual calf weighs. But the reproduction is how many calves do you have for sale? And for those of you who got on the call late, you missed Bart was talking about his twos and threes in the fall herd, right, Bart? It was the fall herd that had bred back 100%. And I tell you, everybody on the phone call when they heard that, Bart was jealous, because we all would like our twos and threes to breed up 100%, and it speaks volumes about where you're going. But what's that require? It requires calving ease and a quick breed back. We want our cows to breed back earlier in the season. We want the heifers to breed the first time at 15 months, and then we want them to rebreed again. And that's all part of reproduction. It drives from the number of cows that we put with a bull in the spring or the fall, how many calves actually go on the truck if we're selling at weaning. That's reproduction. It's the whole function. And then there's longevity. How long will that cow stay in the herd? These females that for whatever reason fall out, whether it's fertility or soundness, or just productivity, these cows that stay longer make us more money. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today. And then finally, how much does it cost to take care of that cow? What does she eat? And how heavily can you stock those cows if you load up and put more cows per acre, or does that diminish your reproductive rate? How's that affect your overall profitability? And usually when I get done with this kind of slide, I think two things are apparent. Pretty much everything that drives your bottom line's on the screen. The one thing that maybe isn't, people say, well, what about the convenience traits like, udders and disposition? But I kind of count that on longevity. Those cows that tend to come after you around the corral or whatever, they don't have a lot of longevity at my place. They get sent down the road. So, that kind of comes out in the wash. But everything else is kind of on that screen. And then what I say to most ranchers is, wow, open up the catalog you got in the mail today and tell me which EPD in there predicts everything on that page. And that's a tough one, right? Because there's a lot of stuff on that page, and most of the EPDs we have don't have much to do with what's on the page. In fact, if we select for some of the indexes and some of the EPDs like yearling weight EPD or carcass weight or dollar beef and Angus, some of those more terminal indexes actually make this function go the wrong way. And we've seen that. And I think if you're listening in tonight, I'm going to assume you're pretty focused on your cow herd and you're pretty focused on what's on the screen. And Red Hill's a good source for genetics that do those things correctly. But how do you measure that? Because it's confusing, right? It's a lot of stuff. And I mean, how do you make that determination? And what's the most important thing in there? And I'm going to tell you the most important part of that function is the fertility piece. It's probably the most important EPD that a lot of people have never heard of. And we were fortunate that we do a genetic analysis with Zoetis and they came up with a lifetime fertility prediction that predicted the number of calves that a bull's daughters have on average, which kind of predicts how long they're in the herd. And that EPD is the most important trait for your cow herd. And if you were going to just select for one EPD, I would tell you to select for that EPD. We're going to go a little deeper than that, okay? But this trait is pretty cool, and you put it in your cow herd by buying high fertility bulls. Then we'll talk about DNA testing your commercial heifers for these traits, and then you're going to have more calves for sale. And if you think about it, it's the biggest point of attrition we have in the cow business, right? We're put 100 cows with the bull, and in most herds, we're lucky if we have 80 calves for sale. We're lucky if we have 80. Now, you can do better than that, certainly, but a lot of herds do worse than that. And this fertility is a really important trait. And the interesting thing is when Zoetis analyzed our database with the advanced models and genomics they have, they found that this trait for a 2 rebreeding at 3 was about 13 or 14% heritable. As that female stays longer and longer, there's fewer of them in the herd, that trait becomes less heritable. So when we get to like 8 years, it's only about 7% heritable. But across the parities from the first calving to the 8th calving, it averages about 10% heritable. So it is a trait that we can improve. And what was really interesting, and I saw Nathan on the call, and I know Nathan and some of his colleagues at the King Ranch Institute of Ranch Management, we sent them this EPD and we said, we really need somebody to model how this EPD, the EPD comes from Zoetis with the numbers at the bottom, right? They go from like -1.5 to +4.5. And they tell you that a bull that's say a 2.5 is going to have a daughter that has one more calf in her lifetime than a bull that's 1.5. And I'll be honest, when we first got this EPD, I spent about a year trying to figure out what the heck that meant. And one day I woke up and I said, I think that's calf crop percentage. And so we called King Ranch Institute, talked to Dr. Mathis there, and he had a couple of the grad students work on that. And what we said is, we want you to model how one more calf or one less calf affects the calf crop percentage weaned. And that's what's over here on the left side, right? Going from 60% to 100%. And what that says is those bulls that sire daughters that are low on that fertility EPD, they're going to have a smaller percentage calf crop in their daughters. And those bulls are at the high end are going to have a higher percentage, okay? And even though this trait's not highly heritable, when we get enough data, there's big differences between sire lines. And I had to put this to test, and I think anybody in our seed stock program that turns in data and runs this EPD, they put it to the test. So they go back and look at the bulls that are high on the EPD, and they go look at the daughters and say, is that true? Are they staying in our herd? And I looked at 2 bulls in particular. We had sold a bull called 18 Carat, and he was a really high marbling composite bull, but a bigger frame bull and a type that you'd be suspicious about how good his daughters were going to be. And then we had another bull we bought from Tom Hook out of Minnesota called Hook's Capitalist. And both these bulls had about 400 plus daughters in our herd. And 18 Carat was down here. He was just under 0. So he was at the low end, right? He was down here predicted in the 70% range. And then the Capitalist bull was up around 3. And when I looked at all the chances those daughters had to calve in our herd, the Capitalist daughters were filling about 92% of those slots, and the 18 Carat daughters were filling about 70% of those slots. And I showed the rest of my team, and I said, this isn't one more calf at the end of a cow's life. This is the nuts and bolts. This is blocking and tackling every year. If we use these high fertility bulls, our calf crop percentage is going to go up. And that's what's going to happen for our customers. So we asked King Ranch to then say, what's the financial impact of that trait? And it turns out it's huge. Let's think about why it's huge. You're going to spend X amount of dollars to run your cows this year. Whether or not you wean one calf or whether you wean 100%, you're going to spend about the same money. So there's this huge marginal impact on the number of calves you wean. And the other impact is those bulls' daughters who leave the herd quickly because of fertility failure, they end up with an enormous depreciation expense on the few calves they do wean. Okay, so if you think about that, you're going to put a cow into the herd. It's probably going to cost you $900 or $1,000 or $1,100 more than with a salvage value of the cow to get that heifer bred pregnant to replace that open cow or that cow that you're culling. And so that added cost then has to be depreciated. If that heifer has, let's say it's $900, which is what's used in our model. If that heifer has 10 calves, there's $90 depreciation per calf, 90. But if that heifer has 2 calves, there's $450 depreciation per calf. And this depreciation, it's a real number, right? It literally costs you that much to replace her. And that's what that depreciation number is. And when we go visit with big commercial outfits, this turnover rate, this calf crop percentage, this longevity is the most important trait. And I was down in Kingsville, Texas recently for a seminar, and I got to tour on King Ranch, and I was shocked. They are DNA testing every female because they're selecting for this trait. And now think about that. They've got tens of thousands of cows they're DNA testing. That's how significant and important it is to them. So you've got all those drivers, right? We worked through that a minute ago. And we've talked about fertility, and some people say, well, maybe I should just select for fertility. There is a way to select for that entire function. And the index that we built for that's called Dollar Ranch. And I know but both Gordon and Bart have studied their data, and they've got a lot of confidence in the ability for that Dollar Ranch number and that fertility number. I just highlighted on this screen. This is a lot one Red Angus bull. He's 125 on Dollar Ranch. To know what that means, that's a prediction of the relative profitability per cow per year. So that bull's 125 compared to a bull that's say 100. This bull's daughters are expected to make $25 more per year. And it's a combination of all those other traits. It's output. So it's looking at output, it's looking at fertility, it's looking at longevity, and it's looking at cow feed costs. It's looking at all those traits and predicting one number. And this bull's exceptional. He's in the top 0.9% in Red Angus bulls, extremely high on Dollar Ranch. And a big part of why he is that, if you look over to the right of that ranch number, just to the right of the circle, there's a number called cow fertility. And at 2.45, among Red Angus bulls, that bull ranks in the top 1%. Okay. And so if you're a cow calf operator and you're selling calves at weaning, and you ask me, what would I look at if I went to Red Hill to buy a bull? I'd look at Dollar Ranch. Dollar Ranch is going to build the most profitable cow herd for you. And it's just that simple. Now, some people in the audience are probably saying, wait a minute, what's it going to do? Well, here's what's in Dollar Ranch. Here's the whole kit and caboodle. Fertility. That fertility EPD is driving 35% of ranch. Cow feed cost is 31%. Hybrid vigors, 22%. And then the calf weight is 12%. It's kind of contrary to what we would have probably thought, that the calf weight is actually the least of those 4 things. Now, remember, the heterosis has impact on weight too. So heterosis can impact both through fertility and through weight. But you can see this index balances those things. So what happens if you select for ranch? Fertility goes up, cow feed cost goes down. In general, it selects for hybrid vigor, and calf weight goes up. But calf weight does not go up at the expense of fertility and feed requirement. And that's really the difference, right? A lot of people, if you look at how they've selected, the big piece of pie would be calf weight. But the trouble when you just select for those high growth cattle is a lot of times fertility and feed requirements go the wrong way. And so that's what's unique about Dollar Ranch. And we'll circle back and talk about that just one more time a little bit later in the talk. And it's working. I love Bart's comment. This was a ranch. This is a commercial ranch up Montana. They run about 3,500 cows, and their 2-year-olds bred up 90%, and they were just tickled pink in a drought year 2 years ago. And that's what they've selected for this ranch EPD for about 7 years now, and they're just really happy with what's going on with their cows. Cows have actually come down a little bit in weight. Weaning weights are up, and of course calf crop percentage is up, which is what they want. Another good friend of mine, Matt Jones from Midland, South Dakota, he's a semen rep for us, and he's used a whole bunch of that Hooks Capitalist bull. And I called him when I was doing that analysis of the bull's daughters. I said, Matt, what do you think about your 2-year-olds out of at a capitalist. He said, well, all the 2-year-olds we kept this last year were, the heifers we ended up breeding were all capitalists. He said, the funny thing, we were preg checking them with the cows because we run them with the cows. And he said, we had about, I think, 97 of them. And he said, there are only 3 of them that were open. He said, we were just shocked. So, this is the same kind of thing. These high fertility cattle are really sticky. And you'll find a lot of them in the Red Hill herd. Now, let's just segue for a minute and talk about the other side of the coin, which is what happens to those calves after weaning? What drives the value of the calves that you sell, whether you're going to sell them to someone who knows what they're worth, or whether you're going to retain ownership in them yourselves. And really, it comes down to just a few things. And we were fortunate. I know ranchers hate bar graphs. This is a bar graph of calf value on different groups of cattle fed at Decatur County Feed Yard in the 1990s. And we got a hold of that data and analyzed it. There was 185,000 calves, and we got all done with all that. And there were just a few big drivers. Feed conversion, which is also average daily gain. Average daily gain, the feedlot, and feed conversion are kind of flip sides of the same coin. Carcass value in terms of marbling and yield, mostly marbling. Carcass weight is a big driver. And then finally, animal health. And the good thing about these 4 traits is three of them we have pretty good predictions for, and we can improve. And when you look at the Red Hill herd, they've done a particularly good job of selecting for these post-weaning traits. You can look at the TI index on the Simmentals or the Gridmaster index on the Red Angus. A lot of people have selected for these traits. If you just select for these traits, the cow function gets worse. Okay, so you got to be careful. And among these traits, really the one that surprisingly today drives the most value today, because remember this study was done back in 2012, and one big difference today, of course, corn's a little higher, but the other big difference today is there are bigger premium spreads between select and choice and prime. And this prime category, bringing back $20 a hundred on the weight of the carcass. So that on a 9-weight carcass, that's $180 if they land in that prime category. That becomes a big driver of value. And so marbling ends up being that driver. And this graph or chart shows why. This was work done for a master's thesis at Colorado State in 2011, right after the camera grading systems came out. And they graded these carcass into different marbling grades, right? Standard, select, low choice, upper 2/3 choice, which is CAB, and then prime, which is higher than CAB. And they cooked the meat, they aged it, I think for a standard, just for the industry average of something like 9 days or something. And then they fed it to 300 trained food professionals. They cooked it to medium doneness. And they said, just give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And this chart, when I saw it back in the day, and this is about 10 years ago, I said, this tells a lot of the story. Look, standard, which has hardly any marbling, they said it's only good 15% of the time. Select, they said was only good 29% of the time. Low choice, which used to kind of be our target, is only good 62% of the time. Upper 2/3 choice, which is where CAB is good for those food professionals 85% of the time, and prime was 99. And when I saw that chart, I said, no, who wants to buy a product that's good 62% of the time or less? Nobody. So my prediction right away was this spread between low choice and upper 2/3 and prime is going to spread out. And this spread between select and choice is going to spread out, and it has. And it's a big driver in the model. And it takes high marbling genetics to hit the upper end of that scale. So now, if you're confused, because now I've been talked about growth and carcass and cows and all that. If you sell at weaning, select with that ranch number. If you sell on the rail at the end, just look at the overall index, which is dollar profit. Because what dollar profit does is it combines the ranch with the post-weaning stuff. And it does a pretty good job of doing that. If you want to just look at the terminal, here's this TI index from Simmental. So this bull ranks in the top 3% on terminal. He's still in the top 6% on fertility. That's 2.54. He's in the top 7% on ranch, but he's way off the charts on profit because he combines a really high terminal with a really high maternal. And so if you're looking at that trade-off, and a lot of people don't do this, they say, well, I'm going to retain ownership, so I don't care about the cow. Whoa, big mistake, because their ranch number will really suffer. But you got to worry about the cow. Other guys I know say, oh, I don't care about the after the weaning thing. Well, if you want to sell your calves at a premium, you should. And I know that Gordon and Bart are working with some of the people selling these calves, and they're starting to use the feeder index from Zoetis on how they rank and what that predicts, and it does predict how much money those calves are going to make for the feedlot. And so this is a way to balance that. I tell people, don't just go terminal. If you own the cow, which almost everybody on the call does, you've got to think about the factory. And then if you're gonna also want to max out what that calf's worth, then select for dollar profit, because it does a better job of balancing all those than you do. I mean, just look at this bull for starters. I mean, this is a great bull. This is one of the high terminal index bulls in the catalog, but he's still really strong on maternal. And what's cool is, you look at all these EPDs, and I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I mean, was there 70, 80, 90 bulls in the catalog, Bart, somewhere in that neighborhood, right? And you start looking at all these numbers, and I mean, we didn't get into ranching because we wanted to study all these numbers, and the indexes make it simple for you. And what this index says is, if you're going to retain ownership, here's one of the really good bulls in the sale, because he's off the charts again, top 1% on dollar profit. And the base here, the ranch is per cow, so that predicts the profit per cow. The dollar profit assumes the bull's going to have 100 calves. So if this bull's 27,000, another bull's 20,000, that's a difference of 7,000 on 100 calves. That's a $70 a calf advantage in the cow herd and in the feedlot, all totals summed up. And that's the way it does it. Here's the weighting on dollar profit. And you can see it's very different than dollar ranch. Remember in dollar ranch that fertility and feed utilization and heterosis were almost all the pie. They were like 88%. Okay. In this one, look where marbling and growth come back in, and carcass weight and yield. So this growth becomes really important on these terminal cattle. Marbling's really important. The heterosis still has a big effect on the fertility. The fertility EPD doesn't include the heterosis. So if you're crossbreeding, you get the fertility plus the heterosis. And there's still a big kick for feed utilization. This feed utilization on profit includes not just what the cow's eating, but also the feed conversion in the feedlot on the calves. And so it's really taken all those things that make you money and balancing them. And the great thing is it shows you where it'll surprise you. And I know when we all start looking at him the first time, we're kind of surprised. Why isn't this bull higher? He's not higher because somewhere in this pie chart he fell down. And the bulls that are high, they filled out this pie chart and they did well in all of these areas. And so it does the balancing and the math for you. Now, here's the coolest part. I mentioned that we at Leachman, we send the data that comes to us from Red Hill and all the other breeders. We send it to Zoetis every week, and we calculate a new genomic run. And this is just an idea of all the people that send it in. You can see Red Hill's down here in the second row, but these are seed stock producers all across the U.S., also in New Zealand and Australia and the UK. And we're all measuring these traits, and we're all sending this data in. And that's what makes up this 1.4 million animals in the database today. And everybody on this slide is really, really focused on doing a good job collecting data. And that's what I like. We're not a breeder association. A breeder association, anybody sends in data, they got to use it. In our deal, we're kind of picky as to who comes in, and we want them to collect good data. And the people on this screen do a really good job of that, including Red Hill. And that's really important to us because it makes the predictions better. And so I think, oh, that's funny. The slide ended up a little funny, didn't it? Well, this slide is supposed to talk about where you're headed. So you have to pick a goal with your cow herd. You got to say, am I going to be a high ranch or a high profit herd? I'd say those are your two real options, unless you're doing a terminal cross. And if you are doing terminal cross, there's some great Charolais selling in this sale, and they'll put out maximum pounds. But you have to kind of pick your goal, and then your goal will drive what you're selecting for. And I think the way that's really new, and I know a lot of people on the call are probably starting to use the Inherit Select test from Zoetis. This is basically taking the data that Red Hill generates and Leachman generates and all those other breeders, and we run an analysis, and then we can predict the same EPDs, the same indexes that we use on our cattle on your commercial heifers. And we put it all on an Angus base. And this is phenomenal value proposition. You do a test, and that test will give you 5 different economic indexes. In fact, that's outdated now. I think it's 6 now. I think dollar feeder's going on. There's 18 or more EPDs from all the growth traits, fertility's in there, cow size is in there, milk production levels in there, dollar ranch, dollar profit are in there, everything's in there. And then it tells you where they rank on each of those traits relative to all the other cattle that Zoetis has tested, hundreds of thousands of animals at this point. And it gives you parentage. It'll tell you which bull sired the heifer, and if you do this in successive generations, it'll match the heifer calf to the cow, even if you don't have that matched. And so it's a great tool. Let me tell you how this tool is best used. If you think about it, what you want to do is if you're going to keep 10 heifers, you want to test 20. So you want to test at least 2 for every one you're going to keep. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to get picky on these indexes and keep the ones that are from the better half. Now, everybody might say, well, I'm buying good bulls and my cows are pretty good. Why do I need to test this? Here's the takeaway example, okay? Art does a really good job picking his replacements. And he's really picky on the bulls he AIs too. And still, when you come to the sale, you want to open the catalog and look at the EPDs because there's a difference, right, between the very best ones and the average one. And they don't see the ones, Bart, that we got rid of, right, that we culled, but I mean, there are some of them, right? And we use those indexes and EPDs to sort. And you can have that same accuracy on your replacement heifers as Bart has on his bulls. And that's pretty phenomenal. And you can do that for $20 to $30 a head. That's what it costs to do this. It's a tremendous value proposition. And we've gone through all the math, and I'm not going to try to explain that today, but the long and short of it is you get about a 3-to-1 return on your investment. So if you test 2 to keep 1, the rate of improvement in your herd will accelerate so much that it'll pay you a 3-to-1 return on investment on the cost of that test. And that's pretty phenomenal. And we've had producers doing it. I think, Jim, I know Jim Johnson's on from Zoetis. I think we launched this product right in the middle of COVID in 2020, I think. And so we've had our first ranches really pick it up in the fall of 2020 or spring of 2021. And so we've had ranches now doing it for 3 or 4 years. And they're really moving the herd. It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal what they're able to do. And they're really focused, and it helps them see where the strengths and weaknesses are in their cattle. It helps them make a decision as to whether they want to retain ownership or sell the calves. I mean, there's just so much you can do with this trait, with this test. And oh yeah, last thing, it gives you breed composition. So it tells you what breeds are in the animal. So it also helps you with your crossbreeding program and tracking all that. And these are all the list of traits, and I won't delve into all that, but obviously the one in orange we said is probably the most important one in your cow herd. That's that fertility EPD that goes into Zoetis's cow-calf index. It goes into our dollar ranch index, and then Zoetis has their feedlot. We're now offering the dollar feeder index as well, and then the profit or total return index from Zoetis takes into account all of those traits. So you get all these indexes and all those traits. Quite frankly, it's a little bit of information overload. I don't know, Bart, if you walked a few producers through their reports. But I think that's the point of the talk. When you get that report back, look, you got to have picked which way you're going. Are you retaining ownership or are you selling at weaning? If you think you're going to retain ownership in the future, select on dollar profit, select on the overall index, and pick high ranch cattle that are high profit. You'll have a great cow herd and you'll have feeder calves you want to feed. And at the other end of it, if you're just going to sell at weaning, then I would lean heavy on the ranch index. You can still look at profit, but I'd read heavy on the ranch. And what I tell people is when you get that information back, the first question I ask my customers is, what are you having problems with? And they'll always say one thing or another. They'll say, well, we're having trouble breeding our 2s and 3s, or we're having trouble with udder quality, or I've got some cows that aren't as good on fleshing ability as I want. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to sort on the index and knock off the bottom third. Then we're going to look at the 2/3 that are left, and we're going to cull them independently on the traits that you're having trouble with. And it's just that simple. You don't need to, I mean, there's so many traits in here, you get tempted to want to check them off on everything. And that's not really what it's about. It's about moving the index as fast as you can and eliminating problems. Because we all know we end up with problems, right? I mean, hopefully less if you buy bulls from Red Hill. You're not going to have a lot of these problems, but you know, calving difficulty is a big deterrent, and of course disposition and bad udders. I mean, these are all things we want to get rid of, and more than anything, we want to get rid of that bull that's bad on fertility, whose daughters come into the herd and they don't stay, they won't rebreed, and you know, I there are bulls that are absolute home wreckers. I played politically correct tonight. I didn't know if Bart wanted me to be really controversial or not. There's a very popular Angus bull today that a lot of people are using, a black Angus bull, and he's in the 98th percentile on cow feed intake. He's in the 97th percentile for being the biggest daughters, and he's in the 99th percentile on cow fertility. And his ranch, Bart, is minus 47. Okay. And I'll tell you what those bulls are, and probably most everybody on this call, most everybody in the cow business, whether they knew it or not, used a bull like this at one point or another. And the bull made daughters, and we loved them, and we weaned the calves, and we put them in the herd, and they probably bred as yearlings. And by the time they were 4s and 5s, there were hardly any of them left. They were all gone. And those bulls ruin your cow-calf profitability. I literally call them herd wreckers. They're just like a wrecking ball in your herd profitability, because you're replacing so many females, and that costs a lot of money. And really, what I think, when you buy seed stock from a seed stock producer, you want to trust what their decision is, right? You guys are relying on Bart and Gordon doing a good job on picking these numbers, and they have. And you see that when you look through the fertility index and the ranch index and the profit index. They're breeding some exceptional cattle, and you rely on that because you don't want those herd wreckers. And this tool, this fertility EPD, the ranch and the profit, helps us as breeders make less mistakes, and it'll help you as a commercial rancher pick less bad heifers. I mean, we've all done it. You know, we pick that favorite heifer calf, and then she breeds, and then she calves, and then she comes up open, and we're sad. And we just wish there was some way to avoid that. And these indexes, these EPDs, these DNA tests are going to help us do that. So I was asked to kind of keep this down and leave some time. I see we got 56 people online, Bart. I hope a couple people have taken a little bit of time to send in some chat questions, because I'd love to make it more interactive. And I might ask you or Gordon to start us off with the first question, just so we can even kind of get everybody relaxed and ready to ask questions. But I'd love to kind of delve down deeper into it, or answer any specific questions that folks might have.
Anybody that has a question, feel free to chat it to us, and we'll be sure to get it asked. Dad, would you like to start?
Yes, Lee. I this daughter ranch, we believe so strongly in it, but tell us about the role of cow size on that daughter range.
Yeah, you know, it's a really good question, Gordon. I mean, I think we all have seen a tendency that the cows that stay around the longest tend to be more moderate in size and more easy fleshing. We would all see that. But there are some big cattle that are very fertile, and we've all seen that as well, and they stay. And the ranch puts downward pressure on size. It used to put even more downward pressure on size because we didn't have the fertility EPD, but now, because we have fertility, it's looking at fertility purely by itself. But then it says, you know, you got to pay for that cow's feed. And you know, if you increase a cow's size, you increase her feed requirement, whether you like it or not. She's going to eat more grass. She's going to eat more supplemental feed, and at the end of the day, that costs you money, and so you've got to pay for that. And so ranch is putting positive downward pressure on cow size. We see it. Our cows now are smaller than they were 10 years ago, and these sires that really excel on fertility and on ranch tend to be smaller. They're not all smaller in terms of their mature cow size, but most of them are. Most of them are.
Yep. Lee, while we're on that, talk about milk a little bit too. We lots about.
You know, milk's a funny trait, Gordon. And I always tell people, when people tell me, well, what do you think on milk? I said, well, first of all, remember, milk's not milk; it's wean weight. We don't milk them. I guess maybe a couple universities have done that study and milked them, and it is correlated to milk, but we're measuring how heavy the calf is, right? Um, and at the end of the day, um, I think that if you're going to retain ownership in your calves, quite frankly, milk doesn't help you at all because you're making a cow send energy from the grass through her udder to her calf, and that's a very inefficient pathway. It's not a good pathway, and we only have to look at the dairy cows. I'm up in Wisconsin, gonna be speaking to some dairy people tomorrow. We only have to look at the dairy cow to know that as we increase milk production, fertility is a problem, and so if we're gonna maximize that fertility trait, we don't want excessive milk. And excessive milk leads to the cow getting drawn down, and of course, cow body condition at breeding is a good predictor of whether it's going to breed back. And so, all these things work in harmony. And at the end of the day, we want optimum milk, right? We want the right amount of milk. And I think, when you look at a bull's EPDs, if we just go back, I'll just wind back up in through here and just look at the last one of these bulls. So here's a bull. I didn't even look what his milk was. So his milk's 26. He's top 30%. But it's really his maternal weaning weight, which is the contribution of his growth and his daughter's milk that predicts what the daughter's production is going to be. And I think it's real easy for the computer to get confused too, whether that's milk or growth. But at the end of the day, that goes back to our original discussion. If we select the cattle for more and more output without measuring fertility, fertility goes down. And if we measure fertility and then optimize the growth, it works. And I know that where there's a bull that we've used from you all, the 231A bull, and I guess he's the maternal grandsire in this pedigree. He's been a phenomenal bull for us, and we're really excited about him. And we think he's got more than enough milk for what we need in our commercial environments. And I just was looking at our best son out of him, and we're going to breed heavily to that line again this year. And so we're not really torn up about milk. We're not torn up about it. If a bull has high fertility and he's high on milk, we're okay with that. If a bull has enough maternal weaning weight and he's high on fertility, we really like that. So we're not. I would tell you that our indexes basically try to select for milk that's in those low to mid 20 kind of optimal range. And historically in our database, when you get up into the high 20s or 30s, fertility tails off. That's just what happens. So
Okay, the first question on our chat is: are bulls in the Dollar Ranch Index compared only by breed or against every bull in the population? And I'll go ahead and answer that. The Simmental bulls are percentile with the Sim-Angus bulls are percentile with Lee's stabilizer bulls and all the crossbred bulls. Purebred Simmental bulls are percentile separate. Red Angus bulls are percentile separate. Angus bulls are percentile separate. So they are percentiled against within their own respective breeds or breed populations.
yep. And yet the numbers are directly comparable, so you can compare them. So
Right.
an 80 ranch is an 80 ranch is an 80 ranch, and it should be noted that we assume you're going to be mating to a 3/4 Angus, quarter Simmental. Okay, and so we calculate the hybrid vigor as such. So the Shars get 100% hybrid vigor because they don't have any Simmental or Angus in them. Everything else gets a fraction of that for the hybrid vigor, assuming that there is primarily Angus, but some Simmental in most of the cows that our customers and Red Hills customers would be breeding.
Okay, the next question is: if I'm raising Angus Charolais cross calves, I'm planning to finish my steers on grass and sell grass-fed beef. Which breed bull should I choose? Or maybe which index should he look at as well, Lee?
Yeah, that's a hard one. First of all, what you're doing is great. I think everybody agree that an Angus Charolais cross makes a pretty good animal. But when you say grass finishing, one thing that comes to mind is that you have to be careful on the Charolais because there's a lot of variation within the Charolais cattle, and certainly what you what you want is you want cattle that are going to have the fleshing ability to carry some fat off your grass finishing. So I like the Charolais Angus cross. I like that. If you're going to do that, I'd sure pick Charolais bulls that are more moderate framed and higher on back fat, and that'll tend to be the ones that are a little better on ranch. But I'd look at those two traits individually. Now, if I was picking heifers to create grass fat cattle, hands down, ranch is the index to use. Ranch is a great index to select for grass finished cattle because it's going to favor the more moderate animals. It's going to favor the easier fleshing animals. It's going to favor the animals that have expressed a high degree of fertility in a forage environment, which will translate into more efficiency on your grazing. So, because the terminal side of all the indexes that we have, Zoetis has, Simmental has, Red Angus has, are all based on finishing rations. They're all based on finishing rations because, of course, that's where 90% of the cattle are finished, and we have to measure it that way. And we don't. It's interesting. We're actually in the process of working on some grass finishing indexes from a terminal side. The challenge to do that properly is having enough data to know. And of course, the grain finishing diets are all pretty similar, right? We know we're going to have, quite a bit of energy and lots of concentrate. The grass finishing environments vary a lot. And depending on where they are and how they are, it's going to affect what the optimum is. So it's a little harder needle to thread. But I would for sure, again, moderate frame, certainly hair shedding is important too, and fleshing ability are super important traits, and ranch is going to more closely predict that cow side of that for sure.
So Lee, I'm going to reference this next question a little bit as we, over the last 5 years, our family, we have family meetings of what bulls we're going to use and what our animals that are going to rank high in our sale order are going to cows that we want to flush or heifers that we want to keep. We have changed our approach to where we are almost exclusively looking at the dollar profit or indexes in general. And we rarely, as our family making decisions, we're rarely looking at the individual EPDs any longer, but just looking at the indexes.
Yep.
But the next question, when we get the data back from Inherit Select, this customer says that the Inherit Select says that he needs to focus on calving ease, maternal, dry matter intake, and marbling. Those would be his weakest traits in his cow herd.
Yep. So let me speak to that. I think it's a great takeaway here. The report from Zoetis is not wrong, okay? What that report's telling you is where your herd's relatively weak, okay? But let me go back, and I don't know whether this particular person sells at weaning or retains ownership. Do you know, Bart?
He sells as yearlings.
Okay, so he's in between. Okay, so I'm going to leave the profit number up, okay? So the three he was bad on was calving ease maternal, which is not on the screen. Okay, it's on the screen insofar as calving ease maternal probably has some effect on fertility, right? But we'll come back to that. And then the other two, it said dry matter intake, and what was the third one?
Marbling.
Marbling. Okay, so of those, okay, dry matter intake here's down on the feed utilization, so that's about 18% of the index. Calving ease maternal is not really on the screen, and marbling's a 20%er. Okay. So if I'm looking at that report, I say, yeah, I'm going to work on marbling. I'm not going to ignore the other two, but there's not very much money to be had by improving those. Okay. And let me talk about why that is. Okay. On calving ease maternal, I mean, you're obviously shopping at Red Hill, and the Simmental Association was great for having maternal calving ease on the. A long time ago, Gordon, they weren't very good, right? But we don't have much trouble with maternal calving ease anymore. I mean, it's really really stop being a significant issue within these cattle, even though both the Red Hill cattle and our cattle are much more heavy muscled than most cattle used to be. We're still not having trouble, and so calving these maternal is one of those traits. You can go get it, but it's kind of like white polka dots. They ain't going to make you any more money. Okay, it's not a trait that's really going to get you. If you had a big problem, I'd say to you, if you looked at that report and you say, oh yeah, I'm pulling a whole bunch of calves. Well, that's a different question, but I don't think anybody is using the bulls from Red Hill. So I think that you got to be careful. Don't chase a trait that doesn't make you money. Well, how do you know which ones make you money? You use the index. And that if there's just one takeaway from the deal, okay? Individual trait selection very rarely is going to make you more money. It's the indexes that make you more money. Now you got to pick the index that's right for you. But I think, and if you do that, if you pick that right index and go after it, all the other stuff will come with it. The feed high dry matter will come down. Okay. And it'll improve over time. And I think that's really the way to look at it. And I do think, that's what's been the hardest thing, is that we all, are tasked with trying to make these decisions. And sometimes if we don't do our homework, we're making a decision at the rate of the bull sale, right, Bart? And I don't know, you're probably selling a bull every minute, right? And I mean, there's a lot of data to analyze in a minute, okay? And the index can just make that simple for you. So I tell people that the real value in that inherit is to pick the heifers you want to keep, and then to say, look, where am I rank on ranch, and where do I rank on profit? If you rank high on ranch and low on profit, what's that say? It says your feeder index is not very good. Okay. If your feeder index is not very good, you shouldn't retain ownership. Okay. It's kind of a crazy thing to think about, but you shouldn't. And so you might want to pick higher profit animals that also still have ranch. So you can, in essence, the indexes let you see how they're balanced, right? They're either maternal or they're terminal, or there's some of these rare animals that do both really well. And the indexes tell you which category every bull, every heifer falls into, and then you make your choice. Great question.
So
I mean, obviously somebody really working on it.
The next question, I'm going to modify it just a little, because I hear this question from a lot of customers. Over the last 15 years, we've encouraged our customers to breed a larger number of heifers and shorten that calving season and keep the ones that breed early, or maybe just AI them and keep those that breed AI or whatever, just to narrow that, keep those that breed early. Do you still think that we need to keep test 2, keep 1, and keep that exposure or calving season short, or give them a little more time to breed?
Well, there's two things going on. All the data says that the heifer that breeds early stays in the herd longer. And that's not a genetic effect. That's a bit of an environmental effect. Okay. It's how much time does she have for uterine involution and get ready to be bred that second time and overcome what is a fairly traumatic experience in her life, coughing out that first calf. And so I still like the short breeding season on the heifers. I do. I like that. But I will tell you that I'm not at all afraid to keep a high fertility heifer that breeds in the last cycle of my breeding season. I'm not afraid to keep her at all. In fact, I'm more likely to keep her than one that's bred early has got a low fertility number, because the breeding as a heifer predicts lifetime productivity, but it doesn't. It's a different trait, right? One is their propensity to breed as a heifer, and the other then is how they can handle calving down and having the milk level and taking care of the calf and putting enough nutrients back to rebreed. And here again is why, it's nice to have moderate milk, because it just makes that process easier. And that's, 231, I don't know where he is on fertility, but he's off the charts, right? He's super, super high on fertility. And I think that's real, At the end of the day, I think that I like breeding in that short period, but I also wouldn't, I would test it pre-weaning time and decide which heifers I'm going to keep to breed. And I'd only pick the high fertility ones, and then I'd still breed on a relatively short season. Yep. That's what I would do. I do both. Give them a chance to be bred early the first time and stay, and then have the genetics that's good at staying, right? It's both those things.
Lee, do you think the next question is, when considering retaining ownership or marketing these cattle to a feedlot, do you think the feedlots more value from the cattle that are have a genomic history of carcass superiority and feedlot performance?
Well, we're at a turning point in the industry. See, this data has never really been around before. I mean, we didn't have this kind of predictive accuracy, but this test's quite powerful, and more data is coming in. It's just going to continue to be more and more accurate. And I think that feedlots are going to be able to value these cattle based on those indexes from the genomics. I don't think there's any question. And they're going to see that when they buy the ones that are really rank high, that those are, I mean, if you have cattle that on the terminal index rank in the top 10% or better, those are phenomenal feeding cattle. Okay. They're phenomenal feeding cattle. And I think the market probably pays more spread today than it's ever paid, but it doesn't pay the real spread. Okay. Because the guy buying the calves doesn't know what he's getting. He can't look at them and tell. He particularly can't look at them and tell with some of these more moderate frame cattle that we have. Okay. Because the old adage is, the best calf is tall and green, right? He's tall and thin. And these cattle that we're raising are not tall and thin. They're short and thick. And then they think that they're going to quit, or they think that they're not going to marble enough, or whatever. And the indexes can answer that question for them. And so I think we're moving to a time when the indexes will have more and more effect on the value proposition. I still believe that if you're producing cattle that are in the top 10% on the terminal traits, you got to retain ownership, because nobody's going to pay you all that goodness. They're just not. They're going to pay you based on what your genetics used to do, because that's what they'll have data on. And they won't know what the new ones do. And I'm going to tell you, we are so excited about how good we can make these feeder cattle without screwing up the cow. Okay. I mean, it's really, if you'd asked me 10 years ago, I'd have told you got to pick one or the other, and you're going to have too much trade-off, and it's hard to do. But I'm going to tell you, with the genomics are they just supercharge our ability to find and select these genetics that are good at so many different things. And it's phenomenal. Now, I tell you that we are also believers that there is, if you've got the herd size, it does still pay to have a sub herd that raises your heifers and focus on ranch with an not ignoring profit, and then terminal cross the other ones with a really high terminal index bull. We like those strategies too, but in a small herd you can't do that. So you got to pick the balanced bull, and that's just the way it is.
And our next question is just reconfirming a $20,000 profit on an Angus bull, red Angus bull, Charolais bull are all directly comparable, correctly?
Yes, sir. Yep. Our deal's completely. So what we do is we adjust all the data for heterosis going in, and we're looking at the additive genetic merit, and then we're factoring in the heterosis as if your cows are 3/4 Angus, quarter Simmental, and it's completely comparable. Yep.
Really good.
I'm going to just tell you right now, this is already the best Q&A question I've ever had on an online seminar. So hats off to the Red Hill customer base. This is awesome.
Well, I don't see any more chats right now, Lee. We appreciate you being on tonight, and it goes right hand in hand with where we're going to go now. I'd like to thank our customers for all their involvement in testing these commercial females over the last 12 months. we kind of introduced the Zoetis Inherit program a year ago right now. And I'd be scared to say how many we've tested, but it's a significant number. I have more and more producers, seems like each week or month, that are sending me their herd reports and showing me what their data looks like, and excited about almost everyone that's tested has been more excited to test their next calf crop. If they tested their first set of heifers as yearlings, before you know it, they're turning around and they're testing the next set of calves at their very first processing, because they're wanting to speed up the process to get this data back quicker. And we see that as a common denominator with our customers. Um, and it's really amazing that now our customers have so many of the same tools to make their heifer selection that we have, that we use, that Lee uses every day in making our selections within our own herds. And
Yeah, I think you said it, Bart. You said that, you're reluctant to make decisions without having it. And I think the commercial guys that test with it will find the same thing. It's so valuable that you'll wonder how you ever got by selecting heifers visually. Because it will find cattle that you don't necessarily think are good, or cattle that you think are really good visually that might not necessarily be very productive, and it'll find them. And it's kind of like, I don't know, I'm not a big baseball fan, but that Jerry Maguire, what they call that movie, Moneyball or something, where the Oakland A's, they use the statistics to do their their drafting, and all the other teams were still using these scouts that were looking at them. And the line in the movie is they were fooled by what they saw. And I think, we can only see so much when we visually appraise cattle, and these indexes, this genomics, see so much more than what we can see. And that's the value of it. And so, yeah, no, it's an exciting tool to share with customers, because it really impacts their bottom line.
if you have any more questions, feel free to chat them. And with that, there are a few changes to the Zoetis program, and coming down the pike, and little things that are a little bit different than they have been in the past. And so most of you some of you have been on our programs before, and have listened to Jim Johnson with Zoetis, or Corey from Zoetis, and many of you have talked to Corey on the phone, so you can see a face and put a name and face together tonight. And I've asked them to update us a little bit about new happenings at Zoetis, and what you, as the producers testing these cattle, can expect going forwards.
Thanks, Bart. See if I can share my screen here real quick and jump in. And so just can everybody see my screen okay? There we go.
Yes, sir.
All right. So just real quick, couple things we've got going on for 2024. And I'll let Corey jump in and for anything that I miss. But 2024, we've got Inherit Select. Our Inherit Select standard order form price is $29. If you test your heifers in 2024, well, you test your heifers either if you tested them in 2023 or plan to test them in 2024 at that standard price, we're offering a whole herd testing promotion. So you can test your mature cow herd. You can test those cows for $14. And so that's a promotion we're running through May 31st. I don't have that on the slide, but it goes through May 31st. If you've tested your heifers in 2023, which a lot of people on here have, and want to test your cow herd, you can do that now for $14. Or if you plan to test your heifers in 2024 and haven't done it yet, now you got an opportunity to jump in and test your cows as well. So if you want to add the dollar profit index to the heifers, and a lot of you do. That's an additional $5. If you want to add it to the cows, that's an additional $3. You have to let Corey or myself know when you send that order form in. You just email us, let us know, so we can add you to the list. Just so billing doesn't bill you the $29 price for everything. And so if you're on the list, they'll go in and they'll bill you for cows at 14 and heifers at 29. It's important when you're filling that order form out to get an approximate age, so we know which ones are cows, which ones are heifers. And so you put everything on the same order. I think that's it for the whole herd program. We did have a slight price change in 2024. And you know, don't shoot the messengers, don't shoot Corey and I, but Zoetis tends to go up on price on things every year. We've been able to hold genomics testing at a fairly consistent price, but they did go up on the Blockyard version, which is what you guys have been doing in the past. It's Inherit Select through Blockyard, which was $25 in 2023. That's moved to $27. However, Zoetis decided to move testing replacement heifers away from that Blockyard platform and mainly use that for steers, testing steer calves. If you've heard any of the programs before, we call that Optimize. So if you test steers through Inherit Optimize, we're going to still do that through Blockyard, but they're really trying to move heifers over to Inherit Select. So there's incentives to test on the standard order form. Inherit Select, it's a lot easier, a lot less complicated than going through Blockyard. There was a big push to go through Blockyard last year, which is why we got a lot of you started on that. But as things have changed and evolved, they decided to move away from that platform, more so for heifer testing, and move that to Inherit Select, which is $29. And the whole herd testing program is only good with the $29 price. It's $27 price through Blockyard. So apologize for the increase. Well, Inherit Select technically is the same as it was last year with the Blockyard price increase and movement from Inherit through Blockyard to Inherit Select on the standard order form. Inherit Connect, which is essentially for your bulls, historically, that has been $16 just to connect parentage on those animals. Now, if you're buying any of the Red Hill cattle, it's already in there. Those bulls are already in the system. But anyway, starting in April sometime, that's going to move to $14 and will include coat color, horn polled, parentage, and deluder. And so that $14 price is going to also include those other traits. Like I said, Inherit through Blockyard doesn't qualify for the order testing program, and shifting that towards steers. So
I think Jim, most of you guys will figure out going just the standard Inherit Select order form is a lot easier than Blockyard. You won't have to wait to get that confirmation email. You can just fill out the order form, submit it in with the email address on top, and then go ahead and mail your samples off. So I think you'll find that a little easier. You don't have to quite work for me and wait for me to enroll those samples for you. If you are confused on the order form, just let me know.
Yep. Any questions on that?
Does anybody have any questions for Jim or Corey on the heifer testing or the whole herd cow testing? It's a unique opportunity. If you're doing your heifers and you think you might want to do your cow herd, it is a unique opportunity for a short period of time here to get it done for the $14. It's quite cheap, really good value. if you have interest, I would certainly consider it.
Yeah, and if you want to reach out to us later, we're more than happy to help you. We'll just get in touch with us through Bart, Sarah, or Gordon, and we'll be glad to help you out with any of this as well. So yeah, it's the reason we did the $14. We know a lot of people requested to do their cows, and basically your cows are, you've already selected them. You're not going to use this as a selection tool. So we decided to lower the price so you can do that. So you could now, help breed your cows more correctively with certain bulls. And so if you go in and test your cow herd and you want to select bulls, Red Hill bulls that improve one thing or another, you kind of divide those cows up into pasture groups to help more precisely make those in order to improve your traits on the cow herd faster and not just heifers. So that was the reason for the cow herd testing.
Jim, I like your comment there because when we look at any herd of heifers I've looked that we've seen the data on, it's obvious that we have lots of variability. And so in the cows, we probably have even more. And so particularly in herds that are a little larger, it could be worth quite a little bit of money to sort those cows into the right breeding group. So I like what you said there. So we haven't talked a lot about that to our customers, but I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, and I think, Gordon, correctively mating those cows, I'm sure probably be worth more than $14 that you're spending on the test, would be my guess. So.
And of course, that helps a lot in bull buying. We in the past, we've had so many people said, I want to buy a good bull. Will you help me find a good bull? And that definition of good becomes reality when we got the information on the heifers to look at. We can figure out what a good bull is for your herd. Whereas in the past, we didn't have any information to help us figure out what that good bull really needed to be.
Well, the neat thing is you may go into that cow herd, you'll section off this half of the cows and say, all right, I'm going to select these to really produce my replacements out of it. And this next group of cows, you may say, well, I'm going to buy a Charolais bull from Red Hill and breed all those terminal, not keep any replacements heifers out of it. Yeah. And so just that fact alone will help you manage and be able to keep better heifers out of the better calves and breed those specifically to high dollar ranch or Zoetis cow calf type females, and then again get more precise on sire selection. So it's a real opportunity.
I think the other thing,
go ahead.
If I can jump in, guys, just for a second. The thing that I say to some of our customers right now is that, with the market the way it's going to be the next couple of years, you maybe got an opportunity with a little bit extra cash flow and profitability to actually turn the herd a little bit faster, but making those decisions pretty hard right now without the data. And so what we find is our customers that do this, then they target some cows that either they want to terminal cross or even move out of the herd. And quite frankly, right now with the market, they can move those cows at pretty good prices. And it's a time when they can afford to maybe create some turnover right now to invest in the future, to then not have to do so when if and when prices come down out of this high. So it's an opportunity to do that as well.
Looks like there's a question in the chat, maybe.
Jim, we do have a chat question. Is it okay to send this year's heifer calves with cow samples? Just verify the age of the cow samples?
That is correct. Yep. Just verify the age of the cow samples and let Corey or I know so we can let Billy know to bill you the cow price, not $29 for everything.
Yeah, I just make sure, just send it. When you send the order form, just send the order form to too, so we can.
Jim and Corey, we appreciate y'all being on tonight, and most of our customers have talked to Corey or emailed, and Sarah's helped them, and it's been an amazing year. The accomplishments of genetic testing these commercial females, and I should know a number, but I would guess it's probably 1,000 head or better. So, but it's been very well received by our customers, and we're proud here at Red Hill that we're going to do the continue with our $5 bull rebate for each heifer tested. So if you have tested heifers and you had that credit like in our October sale and you didn't use it, that credit rolls over till the sale this here in March, or it'll roll over to next fall. But if you've tested heifers and you haven't sent us your data, that's kind of how I track who has the rebates, is when you send me your data. So if you've tested 100 heifers, for example, in the last couple months, and you've shared that data with me, then that's 100 times 5, that's $500 of bull credit on Saturday or at our next sale. And so it's just a way of us of saying thanks for testing and thanks for buying into the technology. And we want to encourage our customers to embrace this technology, and that's the reason that we came up with that $5 rebate. And we're planning on continuing to do that. So we're here to answer any questions along with Corey and Jim, and we appreciate their collaboration and support in this project.
Yeah, I think for us, I mean, we sure talk about Red Hill as being sort of the model program for how to use genomics with your commercial customers. I mean, you guys are doing a fantastic job, and it's just applied the right way. Your commercial customers are testing and buying bulls. You guys are working in partnership, and it's just a really good example of the way this technology should be used in Calvert. So I applaud you guys for doing that. You're leading really the industry, especially in the East. You're leading the industry and how this needs to be done. I think that's going to pay dividends for you guys as well as pay dividends for your customers in the future.
Absolutely. I've had a blast getting to know you guys. So if you have any questions or need anything, just let Jim or I know.
Thank you, Corey. And it's really exciting because I've not had the first person test heifers and tell me that they didn't think it was a good investment. So it's been just kind of universally approved by our customers, and more people are buying into it all the time, and it's a great technology and great way to help them make progress as we move into the future. Thanks to Corey and Jim, and also to Lee for being on tonight. A few announcements I'd like to make is if anybody would like to come look at the bulls, they're here for viewing any day this week. We'll be glad to show them to you. I know it's going to be pretty and sunny here the next 2 or 3 days, and I really would encourage you, if you live remotely close, to come visit and come when we have more time, Dad or I, to spend with you and visit with you about the bulls. If you're buying remotely, don't hesitate to give Dad or I a call. The more advance notice you give us, the more advice or help, or maybe we can go look at the bulls and give you the most honest opinion that we can. So if we can help you, try not to wait till the last minute. We encourage you to come look or call us. Let us answer any questions that you might have. Friday, the cattle will be up for viewing. Some of the bulls will be penned Friday. Some will still be in some bigger pens. They'll all be in smaller pens on Saturday, but you're welcome to come on Friday as well. We will have a meal and kind of an informal program on Friday night that you're welcome to attend. And like all of our other spring sales, lunch will be at 12 on Saturday and the sale at 1 o'clock. I think we have a really outstanding set of bulls. Bulls that look good, have good phenotype, but also bulls that will move your cow herds forward in terms of profitability. I don't see any more questions on the chat, but we've been an hour and 22 minutes, and thanks to our speakers again, and we certainly hope to see you this weekend. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and visit with us. One other thing I would like to mention is the $5 rebate for our $5 bull rebate on your heifers that you're testing is for your replacement heifers each year. That does not apply to if you are going to test your whole cow herd. Your $5 rebate is for testing your replacement heifers each year. Any other questions on the chat boxes? If anyone is needing TSUs for DNA samples, feel free to reach out to Sarah and I or to Corey. She can fix you up and take care of you in those regards. So if you need TSUs or sampling equipment, we'll make sure that you have those when you need to test. So just get back with us. Any other questions?
Bart, I'd just like to say one more thing here, and I think the people who've done the testing on the heifers probably feel the same way. But, you know, since we've been on the dollar profit system, it's kind of been a paradigm shift at Red Hill, because we see that we are making faster improvement in our herd. We feel very strongly about it. We know we are, and the commercial producers, I believe, will see the same thing, and it'll happen fast. This is becoming a fast business with genomics to help us make decisions. The dairy industry is a good example. The dairy industry has taken this genomic testing wholeheartedly and moved forward unbelievably fast, and we have the opportunity to do the same thing. So I'm just so pleased. I want to congratulate all the commercial producers who have been doing genomic testing. You're at the head of the game. So thank you and congratulations.
Thanks to everyone, and we'll look forward to seeing you this weekend.